Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Vagabond VC. I am in Arusha, Tanzania, where I've been located for the past couple of weeks. Actually, tomorrow I'm taking a week off to summit Mount Kilimanjaro, so wish me luck on that. By the time this episode is published, I'll already be back in the office, so hopefully I made it to the top. Today's episode features Jumanne Mtambalike. He is the CEO of Sahara Ventures, based in Dar es Salaam. We conducted the interview in his office there while I was traveling through the city. Beyond his role at Sahara Ventures, Jumanne is also heavily involved in developing local education. We talked through some of that at the end of the show, but I've also included some notes in the show notes as well. I think the work he's doing is very impressive and important, so I highly recommend you check out some of it. But let's get on with the program. I bring you Jumanne Mtambalike. I am in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, with my guest, Jumanne Mtambalike. He's the CEO of Sahara Ventures. Thank you for being with me here today.
Oh, thank you.
So let's just go ahead and do a quick start with your background. I'd like to know how you got involved with startups, venture capital, entrepreneurship. How did you find yourself in this role today?
Yeah, so to be honest, I don't know. It wasn't planned. I always wanted to do something related to computers. I think sometime around early 2000s, my father knew I was so much into making stuffs. He purchased a very old used Pentium 3 computer for me just to play around with it. And fast forward a few years later, when I finished high school, I wanted to do computer science. So I went to India, stayed there for 3 years. I did undergrad in computer science and electronics. And then I came back to Tanzania. I worked as a data analyst at Tanzania Port Authority. And then I knew that wasn't a path for me. I wanted to do something different. So I quit that job, went, and to be honest, I'm not sure if it was even a startup. I started something in Dodoma. It didn't go so well, so I came back to Dar es Salaam. And then by then it was the time Google, Indigo, and some other few international organizations, they had interest to support the ecosystem in Africa. So they were supporting innovation hubs across the continent. In Tanzania, they were working with a group of young, energetic Tanzanians to establish a co-working space called Kinu Co-Creation Space. And that is where my career started. So I was volunteering at Kinu Co-Creation Space, an innovation hub. To work, I was still geekly, supporting young people to build their application, training them on the basics of coding and blogging. So that's how my career started. I volunteered there for a couple of months, and then I got a chance to be employed into another innovation space called Buni, which was public funded innovation space. The rest is history. I've been working in this sector, working with hundreds of startup companies, helping them with their business model, with their go-to-market strategy. I started Sahara Sparks in 2016. After I stopped working with the government, I decided to go private. And the goal was basically to try to see what we can do to put Tanzania on the map. By that time, there was a lot of initiatives happening across Africa. If you go to West Africa, they had an event called Demo Africa. If you go to Nairobi, they had Pivot East. But nothing much was happening in Dar es Salaam. So we just wanted to have a platform where startups, investors, techies can meet in one room, discuss, pitch, and that's how Sahara Sparks, the marketplace, was born. And this was our first entity under the brand, the umbrella of Sahara Ventures. Fast forward a few years later, we saw another opportunity into innovation/tech consulting. We opened up Sahara Consult. A few years later, we saw an opportunity with acceleration and supporting high growth businesses in Tanzania. We started the accelerator. And that's how the group, Sahara Venture, was built. So Sahara Venture is a combination of our marketplace, our accelerator, and our consulting firm. Together, you get the group, the ventures. Our mission basically is to build the innovation ecosystem by strategically work with different partners. If you don't know us, you'll see us like all over the place because we work with academic institutions, we work with public institutions, we work with private companies, and ideally is how do you bring this different innovation ecosystem component together so that you create a conducive environment for an innovator or an entrepreneur to flourish.
What's interesting about that is how exploratory it's been from your first steps of just getting a computer all the way to now, because it seems like you followed that process of just basically following your own curiosity of like where things will lead you. Because even with starting Sahara Ventures, right, we mentioned, well, it first started with the Sparks component, which is the events, getting the networking, the people involved in the ecosystem, and then moved on, well, now we can consult, and now with the acceleration piece, right? So just keep chipping away at like, where could this go? With the acceleration piece, when did that start roughly?
So around 2018, and it basically, because everything we start, it has like a very, very clear reason. It's funny actually, it's driven by the market. When we were doing Sahara Sparks, we quickly realized a lot of people are asking us questions like, so guys, this platform is very nice. So do you do consulting works? Can you do an event like this for us? Can you organize a breakfast meeting on innovation? Can you do a program? Can you run a hackathon for us? And then we realized there's an opportunity to consult on what we do, and we went ahead and opened a consulting firm. When again we were doing Sahara Sparks, what we realized, a lot of companies were coming to the event, but they can't pitch, they can't package well the product, they have poor branding, they don't have a very clear go-to-market strategy, and some of them, they're still struggling with their product market fit. And we felt, okay, there's something we can do here. What should we do here? Because this is an event, it just happens once a while. What if we start a specific program to support the businesses toward that direction? And the way it started, we started with corporate-sponsored accelerator programs, where we go to a corporate partner and tell them, hey, we have X number of startups that are working in the health sector. Since you're also working in the health sector, do you want to work with these companies so that they can be able to grow with you? It started like that, and eventually when we were in our third cohort, I think with UNFPA, when they had interest with startups working in the sexual reproductive health sector, then we quickly realized this is an opportunity to actually start a proper accelerator program and to diversify what we do. We could do it in multiple sectors. So it has always been demand driven. For example, right now, in our biggest strategy, we want to move to the next stage, which is basically to try to unlock capital for startups. And if you look at our framework, we started with Identify, which is basically trying to identify the startups that are operating in the ecosystem. And then we moved to Accelerate, accelerating the identified startups and companies. And then moved to Promote, which is what Sahara Sparks Marketplace does, promote these businesses. And then on the top of that, our final goal is to invest. We have tried twice to raise fund, to start our own fund in Tanzania. Our timing was really bad because we were raising during the COVID-19 crisis. But still it is something we want to do. Right now we want to have a humble beginning, to start with a small angel investor network and then use a network to raise a matching fund for that network. But we believe in solving problems and turning problems into opportunities. One of the biggest problems right now in Tanzania is early stage financing, and we feel if we can address that, then we will unlock a lot of opportunities.
Well, I definitely want to hop into that in a moment here, but just to stick with Sahara Ventures for a second. Obviously, with the timing, COVID-19, difficulties raising funds, makes perfect sense. Is your ultimate goal when you have a fund raised to invest in the startups going through the accelerator program, or is it going to be also an independent, say, VC setup where they don't necessarily have to go through the Sahara Accelerator to get funding as well? Do you have a vision for that already, or the structure, or is it still up in the air?
No, we have a structure ready because we have already submitted this plan to independent investors to support us to start the fund. So the plan is very clear. It is not a classroom setup. It's not like we are going to put entrepreneurs in one room and then train them. It is not structured that way. Already right now we have our venture-backed program. And our venture-backed program is very simple. Hey, my name is Zeb. I'm looking to raise X amount of money for my startup. You go online, you get into our digital platform, it's called Investoredo. You do self-assessment. We check whether you fit to raise capital. The next stage, we organize a due diligence meeting with you, and then you sign IFA, our investment facilitation agreement. Once you sign our investment facilitation agreement, we start to introduce you to commercial investors. Once the investor gives you feedbacks on areas to improve, we offer you mentorship and support to improve in those areas. Once you close the deal, you give us 2 to 5% of the money we've been able to raise. So it's already like pretty much structured. And the service you receive, they are on need basis. If it's something, let's say an investor said, I really like what you do, but you don't have a very clear financial and procurement manual. Can you develop a financial and procurement manual? And then we actually come in and help you to do that. It is not like, hey, this is our program, you need to stay here for 8 weeks, you need to learn how to do this, because we also know, especially if startups are at that stage where they're going to grow, they don't have time to stay in a classroom or do a certain program or course. They're looking for a very specific service, and that is how our accelerator has been designed. So if we be able now to raise this amount of money that we are looking for, what it will bring to us, right now we cannot take equity from these businesses that we support. We only take commission from the money they raise. But if we come in with our own financing as initial investors, then you have a chance to take equity from these businesses, and that is our ambitious plan.
Yeah, ownership is the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's a very tailored product, right? Like you mentioned, to the startup's needs. So, and honestly, what you do, I mentioned before starting this recording, I think most of my listeners know I work for SeedStars. A lot of synergies between what you're doing and what SeedStars does, obviously. So you started this in 2016, right? I know time is so weird now with COVID because it's been 2 years. So, but what has been the challenge in the startup ecosystem here in Tanzania or Dar es Salaam locally, and how have you seen that change actually over the last 5-7 years since starting this? What's developed?
No, I think that's a very, very good question. So when I was still working with Buni, by then I call them the early days of the ecosystem, I think 2012, 2013, the ecosystem was very much at a nascent stage. Nothing much was happening. Like our event was the first big tech event in Tanzania, Sahara Sparks. The innovation hub I was working with was among the 3 only innovation space in Dar es Salaam. There are more than 70 right now across the country, the innovation hubs, from accelerators, incubators, makerspace, co-creation spaces all over the country. That has been one of the areas that's a huge improvement, the number of entrepreneurship support organizations. Another area which we have seen improvement also is engagement of international networks that support entrepreneurs, whether it is SeedStars, whether it is the Westwell Startup House in Arusha. These are international organizations that support startups across the world, and they see Tanzania as a potential market. So that again is a sign that the ecosystem is also maturing. Another thing we've been able to hear now is some successful exit and some companies being able to raise significant capital. The story of Copagas, the story of Nara, East Africa Fruits, and similar companies that have naturally originated from Tanzania with Tanzanian founders being able to raise capital from a commercial investor, whether at the regional stage or the global stage. Those are like the positive sign and positive trends from the ecosystem. There have been some challenges, and among the major challenges is some of the features that are unique to the Big Four, which you said already, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, as well as Nigeria. Things like if you go to Nigeria, the ecosystem is so much powered by the diaspora community. They have a very strong diaspora community. Nigerians who are living in the UK and US are really well connected to the Lagos ecosystem. There is seed funded, there's knowledge transfer, exposure transfer between the ecosystem. That is something that is missing in Tanzania. The Tanzanian diaspora community, it is not that much active with the local innovation and startup ecosystem.
Why do you think that is?
To be honest, I don't know. But one of the things is some of the stuff are demographical. Nigerians, by nature, the population is very big. It's one of the countries that has largest number of diaspora community. So you would have expected something like that to happen. Even the amount of remittance that come back to your country is bigger compared to Tanzania. But I think that's one area where startup founders, especially in Tanzania, are missing. But also, if you look at Nairobi, for example, is my Kenyan friend hates when I say it is an expatriate ecosystem. There's a lot of expats. People were coming either for international mission or they're coming to work with global brands, and then they decide to start startup with local founders. To me, which is really good, because now you have a chemistry between people who are more exposed and connected and the local talent individual who actually can build the businesses. That is something that also is missing in Tanzania. So the average startup founder in Tanzania will be someone, a fresh graduate from University of Dar es Salaam or from Institute of Finance Management or Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology. They don't have much exposure, they don't have much experience. The only thing they have is their college education, which makes them very vulnerable to failure and to do mistakes that will limit them from growth. And most of the times they don't have what it takes to build strong institutions from the beginning. So these are some of the challenges that we see in Tanzania. The other challenge, of course, is access to early stage and seed stage financing. 3 weeks ago, I was in Nairobi, and in a week, I met with, 15 VCs. And a week in Dar es Salaam, I'll be lucky if I meet with one VC. So it tells you also the challenge, especially on the financing gap and the gap of that specific crucial component of any startup ecosystem, which is basically funding. We are seeing efforts from other colleagues, from specifically from the development sector, the likes of UNDP and their Funguo program now coming in with seed-stage financing for startup. There's some funding from the government through the Commission for Science and Technology Tanzania to finance innovation. But still the gap of access to finance, especially from the missing middle, those guys who are looking to scale, is real and it's very challenging.
You mentioned, even just raising your own fund has been challenging.
Yeah, it has been. Now you can imagine if we're struggling to raise funds, and you can imagine for a startup who is fresh from school trying to raise a seed or growth stage fund, it can be very tricky. So those are some of the challenges, but we're very optimistic at Sahara. We decide most of the time to focus on opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities in Tanzania. Tanzania has recently moved to a lower middle income country. Tanzania has one of the youngest population in the world. The age average of this country is 17.9. Consumer spending power is increasing, the size of middle class is increasing. We have among the fastest growing cities in Africa. 3 of them are in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, Mwanza, and Songea. So there's a lot of opportunity in terms of areas for young people to come up with innovative ideas and business model. Also in terms of infrastructure, the mobile penetration is also really good, it's above 80%. The internet penetration is slightly above 50%. You talked about the national ICT broadband backbone, the sea cable thing. It is also connected across 9 borders. So there's those key pillars of the innovation and digital ecosystems. They're already there. There are some issues here and there. And of course, we also have a huge challenge with regulation. But Tanzania Startup Association is something that they're working on right now. Before the introduction, you talked about the Senegal Startup Act and the Tunisia Startup Act and all these startup acts that are happening. I know in Tanzania there's conversation right now between Tanzania Startup Association and the Ministry of Industry and Trade to work on the startup policy, and it's going to come out anytime soon.
Oh, really?
And the goal, is to again unlock and address some of those bottlenecks that hinder our startups to move to the next stage just because of policy issues.
It's so funny because talking to you, it's just like you called them pillars, right? And I'm sitting here going as we're checking off these different boxes, talking about these different things, I'm going, okay, well, what is missing? Yes, like the funding piece, okay. But I'm just like, what is going to be, if all these things are in place, okay, we're getting this startup back, we're starting to have proper regulation, right? Mm-hmm. We have high mobile penetration infrastructure. We have a young mobile first consumer class. It's like, okay, so what's going to be the thing that makes it take off?
I think if there's one thing is mindset. So mindset of young people. You need a society where young people sees opportunity, acts toward the opportunity, and they act different, innovatively. So You need a community, a society of risk taker and problem solvers. People who are not waiting to consume solutions, but they are ready to create solutions themselves. And I think, no offense, but this is where I think Nigerians and Kenyans are really good at. They seize opportunities. They seize opportunities. They capitalize on them. Someone was telling me a joke, a good friend of mine, in Lagos, it's a dog-eat-dog situation, you know. If you're not able to think, there's no way you can be able to create wealth or grow as an individual or as an institution. And that intense competition make people think, you see. But in some of places, like where we are, there's a lot of opportunities, there's abundance, resources, and sometimes it can make people, to stay, everything will be fine tomorrow.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata, everything will be okay. You're getting me. Yeah. But I think mindset will be the game changer. So we need to prepare very competent young Tanzanians who can actually grab opportunity and seize them, and who are ready to solve some of the most complex issues facing our community or society today.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned earlier too about having exposure helps like to change mindset. You need examples, and I guess there's two ways you can get examples, which is being exposed to communities who bring those different types of cultures to you. Like you mentioned, like Nairobi having a big expat community. I'm not sure if Lagos has a big expat community or not, but they do have a lot of at least international relations and people leaving the country and coming back. So that's one thing, the cultural exposure. And two is even just having, like you mentioned earlier too, the examples of people building, scaling, exiting companies. So like, oh, someone can actually do this and they can do it here, right? So yeah, I think that's interesting. There's a guy from Babson, his name is, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now, but he has like a model for startup ecosystems. It'll come back to me in a second, but it's like 6 different pillars, right? Infrastructure, government, finance, human capital, markets being like we just talked about, international markets and that, and culture is one of them. So it seems like that one is the one that's just...
Yeah. And to me, I think culture is the most important one. They say culture is strategy for breakfast. So you can have all these cool things, and have a very good office with very high quality internet, and then you can agree people like, hey, let's show up tomorrow here at 8 a.m. sharp, and if people show up at 12 noon, even if you have good infrastructure, you won't be able to achieve anything. So I really feel investing in culture and ensuring people have the right mindset, especially toward innovation and entrepreneurship, is one of the ways, like really you can be able to build a very strong innovation ecosystem.
I have a question going back a little bit to the funding piece. So like you mentioned, just here in Tanzania, okay, if you went to Nairobi, you got to speak with 10 venture capitalists very quickly. Here, you have trouble finding one, right? And you're trying to become one yourself. So what is it about the ecosystem here that is creating the biggest barriers to that funding? Is it just lack of just general wealth in Tanzania, so lack of money to actually invest in this asset class? Is it lack of education around it? Regulation regarding actually building funds and investing in startups? What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of things. It's one of those complex problems that require systematic interventions. If you look at the past 5 years, I don't like politics and I don't want this to be political, but the business environment was highly affected by the political scene. Investor confidence went really down. But now we're living a dream where we have leadership which is open to promote the growth of private sector, leadership which is open for good policies, especially foreign policies, partnering and working with other countries. We have a president who has committed to work with investors. And that is one strong area because people invest where they feel safe, whether it's high capital investment or early stage investment to start up. Someone wants to put their money where they feel safe, where they feel they can exit safely in a very peaceful way. So that was one of the challenge, and retail it has brought us back years to catch up with other African countries. Another thing which I think is a bit of a challenge is our regulation and legal and regulation environment. There's a lot of work that is being done right now to revisit some of the immigration laws, some of the Fair Competition Commission stuffs around income and capital gain tax that some of them, they don't even make sense. They were designed since the 60s or 70s, and there have been obstacles to regional and international investors investing in Tanzania. And we have to unlock those things. We have to fix those things. The government took a good direction in 2018. Okay. They actually came up with a blueprint to try to identify all those obstacles and fix them. The process has been good. They've already been fixing some of those obstacles. So that is just on the regulation side and how it can act as a barrier when it comes to further growth of the investment landscape. On the other side is the pipeline. Investor goes where there's a high quality pipeline of businesses. An average investor will invest in 1 or 2 startups after seeing 500 plus startups, yeah, and then make a decision. So your pipeline really matters for me to come and invest in your country. So that is our problem. We as Entrepreneur Support Organization, we need to work hard to produce high quality businesses, lucrative businesses with very strong founders, so investors can feel safe to put their money. And also we need second generation founders, people who are more matured. Either they used to work in a corporate setup, so they understand systems and structures, or they have exposure, they have worked in Europe or US and they're coming back, they know how the process works. These are the things which you cannot learn away from them. If you want to build a mature ecosystem, it has to be run by mature people. People who actually know how to talk, how to pitch, how to engage with investors. And those are some of the things which have been kind of hindering investors' appetite in this market. But we're seeing slowly changing. There's the new firms that are coming in. I was in Nairobi. 2 firms, they say they want to open up shop in Salaam to be here physically. Yeah. So it was a good sign, and we're seeing it. And yeah, we're optimistic. In the next few years, we will be where we want to be.
So actually, that is a prelude to my next question. Mm-hmm. So say if you could take out your crystal ball and just say, where do you see this ecosystem 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. Where do you see Tanzania?
Yeah, so I'm unapologetic optimist. I'm seeing a very good, conducive business environment which allow investors to come in and invest in Tanzanian businesses, especially youth-led and women-led Tanzanian businesses, because those are the 2 types of businesses that will have huge impact in Tanzania. As I already told you, most of our society is like young people. And also I'm expecting to see an ecosystem which is more conducive and favorable to investment companies, whether it's institutional investors or individual angel investors network, who are actually investing in both impact and commercial businesses. Because right now, as much as we're doing good, we're still struggling in that area. I'm also looking forward to see high quality pipeline of businesses that are investor ready, where if you look for 50 best fintechs in Africa, then 10 are coming from Tanzania. And we can do that. We have a very huge market. They haven't yet finished the national census, but we are more than 60 million people. So if you can create something meaningful, there is a market for that. So those are the things which I'm very optimistic they will happen. I'm also a huge believer of the role of education system. And I really feel one of the things that can really help to ignite our innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem is high quality education, because garbage in and garbage out. If you produce people who don't have the right education, don't expect they'll become amazing founders. If they cannot think critically, if they're not creative, if they cannot communicate, how do they become good founders? So I really feel that's another area, and it's based on my personal work, and the other team will try at least to make sure the education allow people to become successful founders.
Yeah, we had talked about the pillars of a startup and ecosystem, right? But there's actually also the pillar of human capital and the pillar of entrepreneurship too, right? So
it's an issue of itself, and it's big. I was looking into the recent report by Google and IFC on Africa internet economy and the size of the economy. And one of the things that really stand out, they were doing this study of these big cities, so Cairo, Nairobi, Cape Town, what is the main difference between them and other African cities? One of them is talent. Some of the cities had as many as 80,000 software engineers. So you can imagine having like, if you have a city that has that amount of talent at your disposal, it means any idea can be turned into a reality because all you need is high quality engineers. So we cannot run away from talent. That's another area where I really feel Tanzania can do something about it.
So as we get to the end here, if people want to get in touch with you about the work you're doing here or networking opportunities with Sahara Ventures or funding, anything, what's the best way for individuals to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. First, I'm a blogger, so I write a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So they can go to my Medium account.
Okay.
Futurist, AFRUTURIST, like African future, and then just bind together a futurist. That's at Medium, and I've wrote a lot of like good and controversial articles about startups and innovation in Africa. I think the last most popular one I published like 2 months ago. It got like 80,000 views. So like a lot of good comments and people sharing their opinions. I'm also available on Twitter. I can do conversation on Twitter at a futurist again.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm open for any discussion related to innovation, tech, and entrepreneurship. My email is ceo@saharaventures.com. So those are the best 3 ways to reach out to me. I have some of initiatives that I do for fun.
Yeah.
I'm also supporting an initiative called She Found.
Okay.
Africa is an initiative to support women entrepreneurs and to create female founders. I've worked in this ecosystem for more than 10 years. I can say less than 20% of the founders I've worked with are women, which is really bad.
Yeah.
And also, I'm also actively involved with the Silicon Dar initiative to promote Dar es Salaam as a tech district of Tanzania. It's a very good movement. It's a community of people. So if they want to know about it, I'm open to share, but I've already write a lot about it online. So
it's funny because usually when I ask this question to individuals I'm interviewing, they give their email or their LinkedIn, the website of their firm. But I think it's actually really inspiring, all the things you're doing outside of just this project, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Partech Africa's report. It was one of those reports where it was looking at 2021 year-end funding for Africa. So now it's 6 months old, but it was like, and maybe I'm misremembering the number now, but it was like less than 1% of African funding went to female-led startups, right?
Yeah.
Insane.
No, we need to do something about it. And what I don't like about it, we say it, but we're not doing anything. We are not intentional about it, and I think we need to get intentional about it. I have a 4.5 years old daughter, and I'm already teaching her how to code.
Impressive.
We enjoy it because it involves a lot of like cartoons and movements. So she's always excited whenever she sees the cartoon smile and do something like that.
Good.
But the point here is we have to be intentional about it, and it's systemic. I was just having a conversation with someone. I think they interviewed me like a couple of weeks ago about how do we get more women in digital economy. I'm like, it's systemic. If by the time they're into +4 and you tell them science is for men and it's very difficult, you just need to do arts or music or something like that, then you shouldn't expect to have more tech founders that are women, because systematically we have created that to happen. And even before She Found, I was working very close with another organization called She Codes for Change to support young kids, young women in secondary school to do coding. I literally designed the curriculum for that program. Train them how to do making using Arduino, training them how to do gaming using Scratch, and also using MIT App Inventor how to do mobile applications. And it was very exciting, and some of those young ladies right now, they're doing a lot of impressive work with their own communities. So I really feel it has to be intentional if we want to address that 1% in that report. Otherwise, we'll be keeping saying the same thing in the next 5 years. It's still 1%.
Jumanne, that was, I gotta say, I really inspiring work, honestly. I appreciate everything that you're doing. You're a busy guy, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. But thank you. These are great insights. Asante sana. I'm working on my Swahili. All right. Thank you again, man.